Hello, what is up? So I've been playing Resident Evil 3 recently. So I've been playing it the past week actually, and I really do love this series. It is definitely one of the greatest series of all time really in video games, the Resident Evil series. Just absolutely epic. So I'm actually playing Resident Evil 4 now. So I'm actually up to chapter 13. So last week I did complete Resident Evil 3, and it actually got me thinking about TAA because in this game I wasn't able to actually get FSAR 4 working with upscaler. So there was a game update, so I don't know if something's changed, but then it looked really good actually natively with TAA. So and it's optimized very well. I mean it's literally, especially on the 5090 obviously, but even on the 9070. So I'm playing it the same way on the 5090 and the 97 XT. I'm just running it natively. So I did want to make a video about what I think about, Threat Interactive. I do think, see, it does actually do a lot of videos which I've found them quite interesting to watch. It's all about saving compute time for the graphics cards, and I do agree with him. I think a lot of these developers don't do a good enough job, and you could save a lot more compute time, rendering time for the graphics cards if they were optimized better, to be honest. Because I've always said, if you actually optimize a game better and then you turn upscaling on, it enhances the experience, and that's what it should be. It shouldn't literally carry the experience. You shouldn't have to need these upscalers to actually run a game better. That is my opinion on it. So yeah. So it's got me thinking more about that, so I thought I'd do a video on it, my thoughts on the upscalers, FSAR 4, DLSS 4 versus the older techniques. So I was kind of thinking of doing a video on it anyway, and then when I saw this today on Twitter, it was actually ancient gameplays. So everyone who's got an AMD graphics card should know who he is, and so I think it's safe to say he had a bit of a heated exchange of words with Threat Interactive because basically he said something and then Threat Interactive didn't like it. So yeah, I'll show you what happened. So basically, he took offence to what Ancient Gameplay said. I'll keep my opinions to myself on whether he should have said that or not. But so that's basically what happened anyway. And I will give my thoughts on my opinion because I know Kevin from Threat Interactive is actually pushing for the older techniques to basically be improved. And there was a video recently I watched on the Callisto Protocol, and that is a badly optimised game in parts. You get a lot of stutters, and so I do think he brings up a lot of good points. He also thinks MSAA should be used in every game, really, and yeah, there's a lot of things he says. So I wanted to make a video to actually give my opinion on it, really. So first of all, if I'm looking at Resident Evil 3, so the one just before this game, so obviously I had no access to DLSS 4 or FSAR 4 on that game. So I used TAA. I tried SMAA. So my first thoughts on TAA is it looks alright. I'm not going to lie, it looks alright, but there is a bit of a blur to it. And the more I've used FSAR 4 and DLSS 4, the less I've liked it. So again, I think the trouble is, in modern day games, developers are not doing enough to enhance it, so it won't be looking its best anyway. But I would say on these games, Resident Evil 3 and 4, they actually put a lot of work into it. So yeah, I'm actually thinking it's alright on this game. So I do think that Kevin brings up a lot of good points on Threat Interactive, because so his argument is they should be doing more to enhance the older techniques. And I think that he's got a good point about that. So I'm not going to hate on him because I do think he does bring up some valid points. But there's so much money that's gone into Nvidia with the AI upscaling, and then there are things I like about upscaling that. But again, I always give you my honest opinion. I don't really care, and I would be lying to myself if I thought, say for example, Nvidia, that they didn't manipulate the situation so that DLSS wouldn't be so important today. I would be lying to myself literally if I didn't think that. But at the same time, I am when I'm looking at games, I've looked at a lot of games like Spider-Man Remastered, and at native 100% resolution, I did prefer FSR 4 and DLSS 4 over TAA. But then Kevin from Threat Interactive, he doesn't like TAA even much. He's actually pushing for MSAA, which is pretty demanding, if especially when you go to times 8. But his argument is that you don't have to go that much depending on the resolution. You could just go to 4 times or 2 times on the higher resolutions. So that's quite interesting to me. But he made another very good point again, which I agreed with. He was talking about Expedition 33 looking very bad, basically with the older techniques like TAA, and I do actually agree with him on that because on the like if you put FSR 3 on, that's probably the game where it's looked the worst. It looked actually terrible with FSR 3. It did look very noisy, and it says totally right about that. So I can't discredit what he's talking about when I'm watching his videos. So as good as the game is, Expedition 33, Kevin's argument from Threat Interactive is it should be looking better using the older techniques like, what's actually in the game like TAA, and there's a high possibility that MSAA would do better, although you don't get the extra performance with MSAA. It's possible that then it does rely on game optimization to be very good, which it isn't these days. So upscalers give you more performance. Of course, Unreal Engine 5 really didn't help, so again the need for a DLSS FSR 4 is even greater. So it's kind of been forcing us anyway, and that's why, as I said, it does literally make me wonder if it's just been sort of planned with Nvidia because they do control a lot of the gaming world. Let's be honest, Nvidia, with all the money they've got their foot in the door. But being fair, I don't think they knew Unreal Engine 5 was coming, and I don't think they really saw game optimization getting worse, because definitely I'm wondering why, especially on the Ubisoft games, they were running so well, like Valhalla for example. So with path tracing it would be a lot more difficult, even if you did optimize native a lot better, squeeze more performance out of it. But yeah, when I'm thinking of games like, for example, Assassin's Creed Shadows, even on the 4090 and on the 5090, really you need upscaling to get a much better experience. Although you get over 60 FPS on the 5090. But yeah, I mean, you shouldn't have to turn it on, really. Upscaling to sort of carry the performance, as I've said. I mean, my biggest issue with path tracing was it was so slow that I wasn't even using it. So that was when I had the 4080 and even the 4090, I weren't too bothered about using path tracing. I think the only game I used it in was Cyberpunk when I played that, and that was it, because I just found all the other implementations, like Black Myth Wukong, it wasn't good. I just found even with like DLSS balanced performance, I would get this stutter, and it was really annoying. But definitely at this moment in time, I feel upscaling is definitely it's an advantage for the consumer to get path tracing and ray tracing. I mean path tracing especially to run, so you can have a good gaming experience at least. So that is the advantage of upscaling, and then the frame generation does help the motion smooth up. So all in all, I'd say that I do like the technology. Developers maybe are relying on it. So this is what Kevin Sam from Threat Interactive, that he doesn't like the game optimization. I do agree with him on that. I don't agree that MSAA is really a good alternative, because that literally, on the image, it literally hides the resolution to smooth out objects and all that to make them look better. And that usually is quite demanding. So depending on the game, it would actually be incredibly demanding. So I don't really like that. But going back to the older techniques like TAA SMAA, that did actually on Resident Evil 3. It did bring more clarity to the image actually, SMAA. But there was a few drawbacks with it. For example, the flickering was so bad, especially at 1440p. I didn't look at it at 4K, so I imagine that at 4K it would be better. But no doubt in my mind, DLSS 4 and F-Star 4 is way better. It gives you a smoother image, so it looks more natural. And I thought DLSS 4.5 was overly sharp, but then SMAA literally took it to another level. I looked at it in Kingdom Come 2 actually. A lot of games don't give you access to SMAA now because they just basically rely on DLSS 4 and FSAR 4. So with SMAA you get a sharper image compared to TAA, but TAA will blur out more and give you more of a smoother image like this game here for example. And to me it looks better because it's like an overly sharp image again with SMAA. And DLSS 4.5 actually looked pretty similar. And with multi-sampling like MSAA, the more you go up with it, the more demanding it is, and it does look too overly sharp. I remember trying it out on Assassin's Creed, one of the older games on PC, and I didn't go to the max of it because it was incredibly demanding, but then it did look a bit too overly sharp. So I do think the newer techniques like DLSS and FSR do a better job, like the latest versions of them. 4.5 can be overly sharp in certain games, but then it's not as bad as SMAA in certain games like Resident Evil 3. It did look very flickery, and I can't imagine FSR 4 or DLSS 4 ever being that bad in the game. So going back to the Threat Interactive channel, his argument is he thinks Nvidia are sort of gatekeeping the DLSS, making it exclusive, and he wants the open source techniques to be far better. They should have been improved. More money should have gone into that. So there's a lot of games he's literally called out that look terrible without the artificial intelligence, like the AI upscalers. So definitely Expedition 33 was one of them. I don't think he likes TAA anyway, so he doesn't like TAA. So I definitely understand his argument, but then what else is there if you're not using AI upscalers? So there's nothing, I mean the money would have had to go into something else really. So at the moment, developers, they do such a bad job in certain games that you literally need these upscalers. So I definitely do feel if they actually squeezed a lot more performance out, you could scale to lower end graphics cards more and it would run better on the higher end hardware, and that would be great. I mean, on this game, Resident Evil 4, you're getting over 100 FPS majority of the time on the 9070 XT native, and even more on the 5090 obviously, so it does make you wonder. And then again, back to my point about ray tracing, if you want to put extra effects onto the game like path tracing in real time, there's no chance you're going to get a playable experience at native. And this game does actually use ray tracing, but it's not really a heavy implementation at all. So it's more like shadows, stuff like that. So Kevin from Threat Interactive is saying that you should have MSAA in actually more modern day games really, because they've literally done away with it now. But then my argument against that is I do actually prefer DLSS 4 and FSR 4 when I'm comparing the aliasing techniques. I just think they enhance the native experience a lot of the time. If FSR 4 was on this game, Resident Evil 4, if DLSS 4 was on this game, I would be using it because I'd say I'm 99% sure it would be better. It would look better than TAA. So again, that is the reality for me. So I do think you're getting better image quality when I'm comparing it. I mean, I've done a few videos in the past comparing TAA on older games, and I did prefer the upscaling, the latest versions of it anyway. DLSS 3, definitely I didn't like the blur on that. But yes, I do think it would be handy to have more options for people like who are on RDNA 3, RDNA 2. If you could have a MSAA in the game where they're locked out of the features with DLSS 4 or FSR 4. So yeah, I do actually agree with a lot of stuff he says actually, Kevin. So what Threat Interactive are doing is they're actually pushing for a different way, like an open source way. From what I can gather, he doesn't like the fact that Nvidia, they can gatekeep the technology. So people need to buy a Nvidia graphics card just for the upscaling, and he wants a way of doing it so you don't need a graphics card from a certain company. I think it's a bit unrealistic because you need a lot of money really to make these technologies better, and no one else is doing anything open source wise. So ultimately, it's going to require developers to do a far better job, squeeze more performance out. Say, does a lot of videos on how you can save GPU rendering time, and then you can knock off about 6 milliseconds, stuff like that. But then, yeah, I don't know. I mean, again, if people get access to MSAA, then it's going to require developers to do a far better job, and I don't see that happening. They may do a little bit better. So, yeah, I mean, then the ray tracing as well is demanding. So unless you're actually gaining more FPS, I don't really see how these older techniques are worth the, uh, investment into looking into. Unless you're like going to a 1080p resolution, like with your monitor, there's no really other way of gaining performance apart from using these upscalers. For me, it's as long as developers are actually being honest with how they optimize a game. If I mean, this one actually runs really well at native, so you're getting a decent amount. You're getting at least 100 FPS when you put TAA on. So if every game was actually optimized well, and then you could use MSAA and it looked great, it looked better than the DLSS 4 or FSR 4, yeah, I think you'd have a point about it. But for me, it doesn't. And of course, on the older generation of graphics cards, they can actually gain performance just by using upscaling, like aggressively on performance mode or whatever. So I think upscaling is probably the thing I've liked the most actually, if you're looking at the technology in graphics today. So yeah, I'm not bothered about these older techniques to be honest, because I've just found the later technologies to be better. you know. I mean, there's no doubt in my mind that image quality is better when I'm comparing it majority of the time. So I just don't think it's very practical when I'm thinking about the way the technology is over now. Like you've got ray tracing, which is demanding. Path tracing, especially, is very demanding, extremely. And yeah, I don't think it's even improving the console experience now. So yeah, but then I don't think for 1 second that Unreal Engine 5 was a plan from Nvidia. I don't think anyone literally saw that coming. So my overall conclusion is I think it's more of a benefit as long as developers actually do their best to actually make sure it runs good at native first. And this is what I've said for a very long time actually. The biggest issue was the terrible optimization with games. And then when you turn upscaling on, then you get even more performance. So for me, that's logical. In terms of image quality, definitely I do like the AI upscalers. They are definitely significantly better than TAA, FXAA, SMAA as well. So yeah, again, I do agree with him on some stuff. Like if certain game engines are looking bad when you're upscaling like performance mode. Again, these AI upscalers are getting better all the time, but I've noticed it in certain games where Rebirth was one, but performance mode it got worse, definitely, even balanced. So I would have to say I do really agree with him on game optimization. He's really got it in for Unreal Engine 5. Again, totally agree with him on that. So yeah, I do think he brings up a lot of good points. So thanks for watching. I'll see you in the next one.